Okay, class, we are on page 582 in the Convince Me part of your workbook. On my screen it says show me, but on yours it says convince me, but it still says the same thing, so that's okay. So this says write two things that are true about all rectangular prisms. Write two things that do not define rectangular prisms. So for this part of our workbook, we are going to have to change it just a little bit. Since Mrs. Collier's finger is broken, it is really hard for her to write with the mouse. So we are just going to do one of each. So instead of writing two things, we are just going to write one thing. Because it is really, really hard for Mrs. Collier to write at the moment. But we can still do one thing. So let's write one thing that is true about all rectangular prisms. Well, let's think about a rectangular prism. Okay, I'm thinking about it. Thinking about all that we've learned about it so far. What is one thing that is true about all rectangular prisms? Do you know? I know one thing. All rectangular prisms have six faces. So I'm going to write all, and I'm so sorry, it's not going to be very pretty just because of my finger. I'm going to say all rectangular and you can just be writing this with your pencil, or if you want to say something else that is true about rectangular prisms, you can also do that. So all rectangular prisms have, oh, this is so hard, have six faces. Okay, that will have to do. I'm sorry it's not as pretty as it should be, but you all know why. Okay, so what's one thing that does not define rectangular prisms? So does not define them. Let's think about things that do not define them. So some things that do define a rectangular prism are their six faces, and you could have also said their vertices, how they have 8 vertices. What's something that does not define all shapes or all rectangular prisms? What about colors? So we've seen that a lot in our past lessons when we will have a lot of different shapes and it asks us about how to define that shape. Colors do not define a shape. Just because a rectangular prism is yellow, for example, it does not mean that every rectangular prism is yellow. So we could say color does, again, I'm so sorry it's not as pretty, it's just hard to write with my finger, does not, and we are going to say define. So color does not define, which means color does not make it a rectangular prism. Alright, on the same page, we're on the guided practice, so that's just on the same page. It says circle the words that are true for the shape. So we just did a little bit of this, and we've done some of this earlier this week. So let's look at the picture. So it says all cones, and then it wants you to circle the true statements. So if we look over here at all of these statements, we can see that 2 of them are already circled. So let's read all of the statements. So it says all cones are yellow, All cones have one vertex. All cones are open shapes. All cones can roll. So we are going to circle the words that are true. So all cones are not yellow. This cone here is yellow, but that's what we were just talking about. Color does not define what a shape is, so we are not going to circle that. All cones have one vertex. This is true because this point up here represents our vertex, and all cones have that defining vertex at the top. What about our next statement? All cones are open shapes. Cones are not open shapes, so we've talked about open shapes before. That means there would have to be an entry point, a way to get into this shape, or it would not be fully closed. So that is not true. What about all cones can roll? That statement is true as well. You could roll a cone on its side and it would continue to roll. I like to think of a cone as an ice cream cone. Have you ever seen an ice cream cone? That if you picture what this cone looks like and were to turn it upside down, if you were ever to roll an ice cream cone down a sidewalk, for example, it would roll. So that's how Mrs. Collier remembers it. All right, boys and girls, so if you flip your workbook page over to page 583, that's page 583, you will see more of the independent practice. So independent practice, as you know, means that you are doing it on your own. However, Mrs. Collier is still going to read and walk you through it, but you are going to answer for yourself. So let's get started. Let's start with number 2 on independent practice, page 583. The page number is in the bottom right corner if you need to pause and get there. So we are just doing exactly what we did with our cone on the last page. It just wants us to circle the words that are true for each shape. So our first shape is a cube, but it says the words all cubes. This is very important. So these statements are saying that all the cubes, every single cube, has these things. So when you're looking at the statements, I want you to think, do all cubes have this, or do only some cubes have this? So it wants you to circle the statements that are true about cubes. It also wants you to do that for number 3. It says all cylinders. So not just this one cylinder on our page, it's talking about all cylinders. So do all cylinders have 2 flat surfaces? If they do, you're going to circle that statement. And number 4, it says Kevin wants to build a wall. Circle the 3D shape or shapes he could stack to build the wall. So boys and girls, on number 4, think if you were playing with blocks. If you were playing with a bucket of blocks, if you wanted to build a very tall wall, what shape or 2 shapes would you use to build that wall? And it wants you to circle the shape that you would use. All right. And on the next page, page 584, that's 584. On number 5, it asks you, do all cubes have the same number of edges? So if you don't remember what a cube is, it has a picture of it in number 6 down here. So this is a picture of a cube. So do all cubes have the same number of edges? Let's do this one together because this one it might be a little tricky for you to draw. So let's answer the question. Do all cubes have the same number of edges? So remember, edges are all of these straight lines going through the cube. So do all cubes have the same number of edges? Our answer is yes. So go ahead and circle yes. Now it wants us to explain or draw a picture to show how we know. So drawing a cube took me a while to learn, so it might be a little hard. So if your cube doesn't look exactly like this, that is okay. But I'm going to show you how to draw a cube, and I want you to follow along with me, so get your pencil ready. Okay, so to draw a cube, you draw a square, so draw one square. If you need to pause it as we go, if I'm going too fast, please pause it. So you're going to draw a square. You want to make sure it's a little bit big. Then you're going to go to the middle of that square. So right here, go to the middle of your square. You're going to draw another square. And I'm going out of the box a little bit, but that's okay. So now I have two squares that look like this. So all I did was draw this first square, and then I put a dot in the middle of it, and I drew another square. Now I'm going to connect all of my vertices. So I'm going to connect these lines, this line, and this line. And that's a cube. That's how you draw a cube. We just drew a 3D shape. So if you need to pause it or rewind to go learn how to draw a cube again, because it does take a lot of practice, you can go ahead and do so. So we just did number 5 together. So that is what we're doing for number 5. And again, if you need to pause it, please do so. Number 6 says, Steve says that both of these shapes are the same because they both have 6 faces and they are both purple. So do you agree? Do you agree that these two shapes are the same because they both have 6 faces and are both purple? So boys and girls, I want you to think. What kind of shapes are shown beside the question? Look at those shapes. Are those both the same kind of shape? Yes, they are both purple, and yes, they may have 6 faces, but are they the same shape? Yes or no? So in the lines, I want you to write yes or no, and then can you tell me why you say that for your answer? And our last one, number 7, it says match each shape with the words that describe it. So all of our shapes are up here. So we have a rectangular prism, a cube, a sphere, and a cone. So you are going to draw a line to each one. So, for example, let's do rectangular prism together. So, if I'm looking for a rectangular prism, words that describe it, I'm going to look at, does a rectangular prism have 6 equal faces? Does it have 1 vertex? Does it have 8 vertices? Or does it have no flat surfaces or vertices? So you need to be very careful when answering number 7 because a rectangular prism does have 6 faces. It does. But each of these shapes have to match with a description. So which description best suits a rectangular prism? Best suits. Well, a rectangular prism has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices. So I'm going to match the answer choice 8 vertices to rectangular prism. So it just wants you to draw a line. Now look at the cube answer choice. Which of these descriptions fits the cube best? And you can only match one to a description. There's only 4 shapes and 4 answer choices, so they cannot have the same one.